Fox and Friends continues to show its compassion towards immigrants. In a new Fox and Friends clip, they talk about the dangers of undocumented immigrants crossing the border and how they sometimes have to call for help.
A small Texas town forced to answer 911 calls from stranded illegals in Spanish.
Go on, take your mercy.
Yes, somebody speak Spanish?
Sí.
Oiga, si pueden venir una licuadora pronto porque mi primo se está poniendo morado.
¿Pero está respirando?
Sí, poquito le pasó su corazón y sí, ese aire.
Bien, pues nomás habla con él, nomás dile, nomás habla con él, porque okay?
Okay.
Just one example of the 911 calls bombarding the Brooks County Police Department. Not only are they understaffed and lacking resources, now they've got to deal with illegal immigrants who have no business being here.
Well, all those calls are of course, like they have a crisis, and we need to respond to them. And those are pretty regular calls on a daily basis.
So those calls you have to respond to, even though, for the most part, when you get there, you realize they're not even American citizens.
That's correct, but they're on U.S. soil, and the due process comes into play, and that's the way we're taking them at.
Here's another example of a 911 call that came into your people.
911, take your mercy.
Español, sí.
Hello?
Español.
Sí.
Estoy enfermo y ahorita ya caí aquí, no me puedo ni levantar. No
¿Tienen agua y comida?
No tenemos nada de agua.
Señor, ayúdenos, por favor.
Sí, no se mortifiquen, no se
Tenemos
mortifiquen.
3 días, está perdido y no hemos tomado agua.
¿Desde cuándo?
No hayamos qué hacer. 3 días vamos.
So, Sheriff, they're coming across the border. They haven't had a drink in 3 days. What do you do?
Well, basically, what you're trying to do when the call comes in, it's not as easy as 1, 2, and 3 step procedure. It's all you do is kind of get an idea as to where they might be at.
What do you want the message to be to Washington and everybody else watching?
They need to have a sincere dialogue. Forget about the Republican side, forget about the Democratic side. Sit down and have a sincere dialogue where they can actually resolve this issue. It has to be resolved. As long as they keep stalling it, this is going to continue, and it's going to continue to where our funds are going to be depleted.
All right, Chief Sheriff Deputy Benny Martinez, thank you so much.
So what do we do? That was the question. So what do we do? You give them some fucking water. That's what you do. But no, it's more like we let them die. Look, the people on Fox News, I mean, you could see sort of the disdain, I suppose. And they're pretty much thinking, oh, we got it. Doocy's voice, especially. They're coming over the border, and now we got to help them? That's pretty much saying, look, I don't give a shit if you're turning purple, okay? If your brother or whatever, if your cousin's turning purple, I don't care if you're turning purple. I don't care if you're turning purple, blue, green, hell, you're already brown, and that's a problem, right? That's bad enough. But holy shit, oh my God, you're not speaking English, and you're here illegally, so why should we help you? That's funny, because I didn't know that crossing the border illegally was punishable by death. When did we become East Germany, guys? Look, Kilmeade does make a point, and although inadvertently, I think, Kilmeade makes a point that some of those, he's right, some of those border towns do have a big problem with underfunding and understaffing. That's exactly why you need a comprehensive immigration reform package that includes funding. Kind of like the Senate bill from last year that would have allocated $46 billion to border security spending alone. Maybe something like that might help. Oh, that's right. House Republicans won't fucking touch it. To that same point about underfunding, Rick Perry decided to send out the National Guard to the border. Yes, 1,000 members of the Texas National Guard will go to the border to what? What are they going to do at the border? They aim guns at children? Is that what we're spending the money on? Seriously? The Dallas Morning News reports that Texas border sheriffs are not exactly happy about Rick Perry's decision to send 1,000 National Guard units to the border. and this was in Raw Story, border sheriff said that they would rather have, that he spent the money on additional personnel with the power to actively participate in border operations. Cameron County Sheriff Omar Lucio told the Dallas Morning News, quote, "I don't know what good they can do. You can't just come out here and be a police officer." And he's right. National Guard units, what are they going to do? They don't have the power to arrest. They don't have the power to make arrests. So what are they there for? Well, they're there for intimidation and to make a political message, a political stunt. I'm strong on border defense. Look at how many National Guard units I sent over there, over to the border to scare those kids. That'll show them. It's fucking ridiculous. Conservatives would rather complain about stopping people from dying because they don't speak English. Because they weren't born here and they, God forbid, wanted a better life than being possibly enslaved or killed by drug gangs empowered from our drug war. What good God-fearing conservative Christians you are. Hey, assholes, I got a question for you. Did Jesus speak English? Was he an American? What did he have to say about foreigners? Look, the only voice of reason here, in my opinion, was the sheriff, Benny Martinez, who at the end said, look, we've got to drop some of this partisan ideology and actually have a sincere discussion about what to do about this problem. But when you're looking for a voice of reason, you're not going to find it coming from Fox News. Speaking of voice of reason, Jordan?
Why, yes, I am the voice of reason. This is there's so much Republican projection going on here. So keep in mind, these are the same people who every time they want to start a new war or justify some use of excessive force, in some foreign country, they say things like, these people hate us and they want us all to die. That's because they hate foreigners and they want them all to die. And they literally said it here in the broadcast. They're literally angry that emergency responders are responding to emergencies. I get the idea that, these are people who have broken the law. They've come here illegally, but they've also, it's got to be tempered with the fact that they've come here illegally because they want to be here so badly, that they believe America is a better place, that this is where they can have a better life. These are the people fighting for the American dream, and it's the same thing that, my ancestors did. Or at least I bet a lot of people's ancestors did. There weren't immigration laws then because enough of us got over here and decided that we were going to keep everybody else out. But it's the same concept. And God, these people have literally risked their life to come here. They put themselves in danger. They're about to die. They made it to the finish line. And to reward them, instead of giving them a chance at the American dream to get in, to become a part of our society and our economy and contribute, these people want to let them die. And can you just imagine, if that happened in other places in the world, like the outrage, the outcry, if, England all of a sudden stopped providing health care to Americans? By the way, England provides pretty much free health care to Americans because that's their health care system. So even though we don't pay taxes, which is literally what funds their system, they still give us health care because that's what decent nations do. And I know there's a lot of debate about whether or not America is a decent nation. I believe that it is, or at least that it has the potential to be.
The first thing I wanted to do was start out with a non-substantive point. It was very classy of Fox to label the 911 dispatch call as dispatcher and immigrant. Because it was a Spanish-speaking individual, so automatically an immigrant, even though in those cases, at least the second one, it was kind of obvious. But hilarious nonetheless, and totally unnecessary, but that was nice. Number two, what's that guy's name? Fucking Doocy or the other one?
Kilmeade.
Kilmeade.
Who's the one asking the questions?
Kilmeade's like, they asked to speak Spanish. Like, yeah, the operator was bilingual, so he had to like switch part of his brain for a split second, and then talk to him in his native tongue. Oh my God, that's a national tragedy. But in reality, like, this is another instance of conservatives having a reasonable point presented by unreasonable racist people. Like, the federal government is responsible for immigration, and although like studies show that on a macro level, immigration is a good thing, on a micro level, it might negatively impact a hospital or a police station that has to deal with people coming across the border and calling 911 because they need water. Like, it's a pain in the ass to drive out there and give that guy water. Not saying that you shouldn't do it. Of course, you should give people water, obviously, but like, the federal government, that's their responsibility, and that bill is being shifted over to the local police departments and the local hospitals, and that is a problem on a micro level. But of course, he has to make it about how they come over and they call 911 without speaking English, which, I mean, I live in New York. You could call 911 and speak Korean, Spanish, Chinese, like all these other different languages. They'll find somebody to talk to because your emergency isn't less emergency-y if you don't speak English. Like, I know that might be a crazy concept to understand, but if you get shot, the language that you speak does not impact the what you call it, whether or not the wound is mortal or if you're going to be all right. Like, that's just not how it works. Like, I'm not a doctor, I didn't go to medical school, but I'm pretty sure I'm on safe ground that that's just not how it works.
And you know, here's the thing about that. It's like, the language that he evoked during that opening segment, the illegals, yes, they came over here in violation of immigration law. Fine, we'll definitely concede that point because those are actual facts. But the overall narrative that they're trying to draw is, look at those people coming up here over into our land and then expecting our help. But they're illegals. They're not even American. They're not even American citizens. Exactly what Kilmeade had said. You drive all the way out there just to find out they're not Americans. As if that's like some sort of horrible thing. They're people. You're supposed to help them. It shouldn't matter. They're human beings. And yes, they'd have a different color skin than you do, Kilmeade. That's unless you spend a little too much time in the tanner, like Mr. Boehner, and they speak a different language than you. That doesn't make them less human than you. In fact, I would argue that you are less human than they are because you're not acting like a fucking human.
But Jeff, to be fair, back in olden times when you called 911, didn't they say 911, what's your country of origin?
I don't recall that, but
wasn't that the first thing that
you know what?
Until Obama got elected?
In rewritten American Republican history, that is how it went. See, well, anything can happen when you rewrite the books.
We haven't really expounded on this enough. You know, we said it, you know, whenever you first opened the story. But like, okay, so Rick Perry's sending 1,000 National Guard troops down to the border that really can't do anything. So there is an issue here, and this is another opportunity again for a genuine conversation or even genuine action based on conservative and liberal ideology. Okay, so the liberal answer here is, as Sean pointed out, the feds handle immigration. The law in place right now is that whenever these kids come seeking asylum, because that's what they are, they're asylum seekers, not illegal refugees. To be fair, we don't know that that's what's going on in the clips that Fox News played, and in fact, it probably wasn't. But in terms of sending the guard down to the border, that is in response to these kids. So what you do, one, you can't say, well, they should come here legally, because that's not what being a refugee is, right? Refugees don't get to stay in the war zone while their paperwork gets filed. Being a refugee means you are fleeing a situation you had to leave right then. So that's the first point.
I hate to be the second point, but refugees do file to come to the country from their home country.
Do they normally, or do they get here and
asylees, people who seek asylum come here.
Right. So these people are seeking asylum. They're not refugees. Okay, that's a good legal point, but the argument stands. I used the wrong word. Thank you, Sean. I appreciate that.
Also, you're
So-
still a dick, though.
No, that's good. And I've been using those two terms interchangeably, so I'm glad Sean corrected me on that.
No, he just said not to be a dick or anything. Okay, well, you're still being a dick. No, I'm kidding.
No, Sean is a dick.
Bust nuts, Sean.
That's true, but he wasn't being one at that particular moment.
All right, continue.
Okay, so right in the middle of a good point. So there's that. Then the two options here are you could take federal money and send more judges down there to cycle these kids through the system to either grant them asylum or find out they don't have a strong enough case to be granted asylum and send them back home, which is a very harsh reality, but that's the way a nation of laws works. The more small government conservative answer would be to give more money, as the sheriff talked about, to the local law enforcement forces who are there doing it. What does Rick Perry do? He sends out the biggest, most militarized force he has under his auspice as governor that can do the least and sends them to the border. And it's the most expensive option he had. It's the least effective option he had. But it gets him a lot of press and a lot of attention, and it makes him look tough on crime by not really being tough on crime at all. And that's all he cares about, man. It's Republican theater. I'm telling you, when these people talk about how ineffective the government is and how it can never work and how it's run by idiots, it's because they are living that out every day and doing their damnedest to make it a reality.
To be fair, the current conservatives in power, which I would definitely classify them as fringe, but the current conservative mindset on immigration is build a wall. And that's it. Build a wall, build a moat, fill it with alligators with machine guns on their fucking heads that will shoot anything or anyone that comes near the border. If you're a kid, sorry. But, at least you didn't make it to the electrified portion of the fence, which would have been worse. That's the current Republican plan.
And by the way, Rick Perry, the reason Rick Perry's so dumb, the kids, when they come here, they surrender themselves to Border Patrol. So you're giving them more people to surrender themselves to, because that's like their goal, is to find somebody who works for the U.S. government and turn themselves in. So, nice work. And by the way, one of the reasons that they need water is because they go through the desert area and the more harder path to America, because we built shitty fences. Huh?
Yeah, of course, to avoid getting caught.
And avoid the fence. Like we built the fence in all the easy areas or in a lot of the easy areas there is to build a fence, and the parts that don't have a fence are like Death Valley parts, and that's where they have to go through. So when they don't cut through the fence because the fence is super ineffective. But anyway, so yeah, Rick Perry's just an idiot, and he doesn't want to. He looks soft on immigration in the last presidential run, and Mitt Romney beat him up over it, and now he's trying to change it, so he's going to be tough on immigration with his glasses.
Yeah, for that it's all about optics. I mean, there's been that picture floating around with Rick Perry holding, a semi-automatic rifle to use the correct term.
No, that's a straight-up machine gun, brother.
Was it a machine gun?
Yeah, that is a straight-up mounted machine gun, man.
Well, he was holding a machine gun sitting next to Sean Hannity that also had a machine gun. What kind of image are they sending?
Maybe we're talking about.
It's the one where, it's the one where he was hanging out with Sean Hannity. I think he was wearing like a Kevlar vest, and
So there's multiple pictures of Rick Perry with guns. Like that's the image he wants to portray.
That's the least surprising thing to me in the world. But what I wanted to point out is that they made this trip, he and Sean Hannity made this trip near the border to apparently go aim guns at these children. Like, we don't know if they were actually aiming the guns down there, but you can assume that was the whole intent of the photo op is to show how strong they are against these illegals that are coming in and apparently trying to kill us, take our land, or whatever kind of kooky conspiracy these nutbags tend to think of.
And again, that's just an example of how weak they are on policy. I mean, I'm the gun guy in the group, right? I've got 2 guns within arm's reach of me right now. But as a politician, look at my guns is not a valid immigration policy, right? Like you can't, like in a debate, whenever somebody says, you know, what's your stance on comprehensive immigration reform? You can't say, look at my guns. That's nonsense. That's nothing there. And then I want to come back, if I could be so narcissistic, to come back to a point I made earlier. Not only was this an opportunity for a legitimate small government versus big government ideological showdown to see which one was better, in all honesty, it was probably a chance for the small government guys to win. Because when it comes to, it's slightly related here, so pardon me for kind of detouring a little bit. When it comes to shooting incidents and stuff like that, and questionable use of force on the border, it is disproportionately from the national border patrol than it is compared to like the local sheriffs and local police forces. Even whenever they're running joint operations and working together, the national, more militarized force has a far worse record, and it's kind of a big scandal right now. So this was a chance for someone who genuinely cared about governing and doing what was best for America and the state of Texas from a small government perspective to step up and show their way. But instead, unfortunately, the good people of Texas have Rick Perry as their representative, and he took pictures with machine guns. That's his policy.
Perry, 2016, I got the guns.